Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Pike's Place podcast. I'm Alec, he's Mike, and we're back to talk about some Rutgers basketball. Good and not so good. So far, Scarlet Knights are 0-2 in Big Ten, 0-3 now in Big Ten play. They lost to Iowa today, so I guess that's the first order of business to talk about. Unfortunate loss to the Hawkeyes, where horrible start. They closed out the first half pretty well, and then they just could not ever get within an arm's length of Iowa as the game went on, and unfortunately, their third straight Big Ten loss to start out the campaign.
Yeah, today was a tough game. It's just been the way Rutgers has played all season. It's like they dig themselves into a big hole, and then they have to come and claw back. And they were able to claw back against Ohio State, get the game to within one. Um, but they just don't have the firepower to be down 15, 18, 20 points and come all the way back. And if they're not going to start fast, they're not going to win many games in the Big Ten. So definitely a eye-opening experience, I guess you could say. The last, out of the last four halves of basketball, we played one really good half of basketball and three really bad halves of basketball. And unfortunately, as we sit here on January 6th, it kind of looks like the one good half of basketball could be the outlier versus the three shitty, if there's any other way to put it, halves of basketball.
Yeah, unfortunately, there's really not. I mean, you talked about they looked better in the second half against Ohio State. Derek Simpson really got it going, working downhill off the top of the key on some of those high ball screens, and we didn't really see that. Mostly, I guess you could attribute that to Simpson getting a little banged up in this game, but just the offense, it didn't look terrible, but the defense could not get a stop, and that was probably the most concerning part against Iowa, at least.
Yeah, I think when you look at this team, it's a bunch of puzzle pieces that don't fit together to make a puzzle. Um, you have Noah. We'll start, with the starting lineup. You have Noah Fernandez, who's an undersized point guard that is more of a scorer than a distributor, and at this level, he can't really score consistently, and we don't have any sort of weapons for him to distribute to on a consistent basis. And him being 5'11", him being not a talented enough lead guard in this conference really hinders him and the whole offense. You go to Derek Simpson. Derek Simpson's a combo guard. He can play the one, not a super effective one, but he just on size and speed and skill, he could play the one. But if he's going to shoot sub 30% from three or right around 30% from three, and he's not, racking in 6, 7 assists a game, it's not really going to be super effective for Rutgers. Mag and Hyatt fit in fine. Mag and Hyatt can play the three, the four. They're good size. You would like one of them to be closer to 6'8" than 6'6", but they're good enough players. I have no problem with them. And then you got Cliff. Cliff, supposed to be an all Big Ten center, has not looked that part. But is that on Cliff or is that on the guys he's playing with? I mean, we saw him play with Gio and Paul and Cam and Ron, and he dunked everything. I mean, what does he have? 15 dunks on the year this year. He hasn't developed the offensive game that we need, and even if he does get double teamed, he can't move the ball fast enough where we could take advantage of him drawing a double. So it's a lot of pieces that can play. Like, I think they're decent enough players in the Big Ten, but they don't work together. And Coach Pike's kind of running out of time at this point. We're 14 games into the season and it's going downhill. It doesn't look like it's not. It doesn't even look like they're treading water at this point.
Yeah, and before I forget, of course, before we go on to the next thing, before I forget, of course, as part of the Big Banter Sports Network, of course, be sure to follow us on social media and the Big Banter on social media. And of course, check out the website too at bigbantersports.com. We got a lot of stuff going on in the Big Ten, football, basketball, all the sports. So definitely don't want to miss out on any of that. And yeah, one of the points that you mentioned was Cliff. I mean, he unfortunately just isn't built to be that one guy, the guy that always has the ball in his hands in crunch time on offense in particular. And I think today was the first time in at least a few games, the first time in the Big Ten slate at least, that we saw Cliff really get kind of force-fed touches, and almost every single time he got the ball, there were two, even three Iowa defenders around him. And you're right, he just wasn't moving the ball fast enough to, try to free up some lanes off the double teams, and that's definitely a big problem. And if the ball stops with him, he doesn't have the offensive bag to make some of those post moves down low and get some points on the board. I mean, I think he only had like one field goal at halftime. So just the way that he hasn't been able to really take that next step in his offensive game is definitely concerning. And I mean, it really makes you wonder what he's going to look like for the rest of the season off that.
Yeah, I think Cliff is a good player, and I think he has enough skill to score down low. I don't remember the game. I want to say it was Indiana last year. It was one of those December Big Ten home games. It might have been 2 years ago. It was like we came, or maybe it was like the late December game. I forget what it was, but we came off like a long extended break, and we're playing a big game at home, and it was like you saw it click, and it was like, oh my god, Cliff's gonna take off. Cliff's gonna be great, and then it like disappeared. Um, he's a player that can play in space and with pace. He's fast. He's athletic. He's not a Hunter Dickinson. You can't drop it to him in the post and run the offense through him. You could throw lobs to him. You could have him in the dunker spot. You could have him. He's effective in the high ball screen with Derek Simpson. They didn't run it at all. Maybe it's because I was kind of running a 2-3 zone, it looked like at some point, and you really don't want to screen a zone, but they don't use, like, the offense doesn't use the players to their talents. And I don't know if that's on the coaches, if it's a personnel thing, but it's just not working. And the thing that we've seen through the first three Big Ten games, Illinois, who obviously he's suspended right now, had Terrence Shannon. Ohio State had Bruce Thornton, and Iowa has Peyton Sandford. Each team had a guy that commanded a double team, commanded two defenders, commanded a hedge. Does Rutgers doesn't have a single guy that can A, beat the guy in front of them, and B, command a double team. Even when Derek was putting up 23 points against Iowa or Ohio State, they weren't doubling him. They're just like, all right, we'll live with you as a career like 35% shooter hitting these deep mid-range pull-ups. Like, if that's what beats us, that's what beats us. Rutgers doesn't have a guy, and unfortunately, they won't have that guy until next year. But it's you got to play out the season. You got to hope for the best. But it's tough to watch when the team doesn't even resemble typical Coach Pike Rutgers basketball.
Yeah, and that last point is definitely something that has been concerning as well. The typical defense and rebounding that Peichel always loves to emphasize and has since he got here. The rebounding has just been flat out bad this year in particular. I mean, the defense has been pretty good. I mean, they were the top ranked Big Ten defense coming into the Iowa game, and then they got shredded by the Hawkeyes. So the rebounding has been a major problem this year, and it just doesn't look like it is going to get any better. And there are some times where you think, wow, that's just an unlucky bounce, just happened to go really far, just happened to get a jumper that hit the back iron and went way back out to the perimeter and they picked it up. But like eventually it's not bad luck, it's just bad positioning. And it feels like I just don't know what kind of fix can be made, especially given the guard size that we mentioned. Some of the smaller guards transitioning away from the Caleb McConnells and the Paul Mulcahy's at, wing size playing guard. It's just, is it going to get better is the question. I just don't know.
To me, the only fix, and he hasn't looked great in the last X amount of games, 3, 4, 5 games, but it's the only fix that I think can pay off long term and helps right away. Like, will help at least with the rebounding, and that's Gavin Griffiths. Gavin Griffiths is 6'7", 6'8". If you put him in the lineup instead of Noah Fernandez, you add 7-8 inches to your lineup. The one thing I've noticed with Gavin is, yeah, he isn't a great defensive player right now, but how many times have we seen him make up getting beat off the dribble with a chase down block? Or how many times have we seen him be able to tip a rebound out to someone or grab a rebound just because of his raw, like, pure length and athleticism? He is struggling, and I think it's a confidence thing and a timing thing. I think he's rushing a lot of his shots, and obviously when he keeps missing these bunnies, like, it's like we just you just got to see something go down, and hopefully it'll click for him. But I think he's going to be on the team next year, and he can be a big part of the team next year. We're not winning the NCAA tournament or the NCAA championship this year. We're not winning the Big Ten. Like, let him grow, let him play, let him get his minutes and see what he's got. Like, I'd rather Noah sit the bench and play 15, 20 minutes a game and Gavin play 25, 30 minutes a game and let Gavin grow. Because you know what? Come March 12th or whatever the Big Ten tournament ends, Noah Fernandez is never going to play another game in Rutgers basketball. No, he's not going to even probably be a part of Rutgers basketball. So let's go with Gavin. Let's see what he's got, and let him go through the freshman growing pains. I think that helps the rebounding situation a little bit, and I don't think the defense is going to take much of a hit going from Noah to Gavin. The one issue would be who plays the point guard. What I know, Derek's not the best point guard. Let him do it. Just let him. Let's see how it can't be that bad. It can't be worse than what we're seeing now.
Exactly, and I fully agree with you. I do think it's a confidence thing with Gavin Griffiths. I mean, you're right. He's just kind of rushing his shots. One thing that I've noticed, he just doesn't really let his feet get totally set. And I know if you're a quick twitch catch and shoot guy, you can't completely get set every time, but sometimes you'll see him get the ball and hoist it up, and he's kind of he is kind of angled towards the side too, which you just can't do. And if you want to be an accurate shooter, so yeah, I think getting him on the floor more as a way to kind of let the game slow down for him and play to his own speed. And you're right, he's not a great defender. He still has to work on, he sometimes gets caught ball watching. He's not the quickest on his feet, but he definitely tries and gives an effort, which I think is cannot be understated. And yeah, I think having his length and his abilities as kind of that 2 or 3 type guy, that gives you an ability to put him out there and have some of that size that they're missing right now at the guard spot. And I think he will improve if he gets more time on the floor, just because the college game starts to slow down for him. He'll naturally kind of get that feel a little bit more and then just play to his own speed and get some of those shots. And I think I know it was in garbage time and Rutgers was already losing, but he got the ball in the corner, drove in and had a nice little layup finish. I think that could mean a lot for him, just seeing it go down. Like you said, sometimes you just got to see something go in and then you get your confidence back. Hopefully we see more of that in the future. And, coming home after a 2-game road trip will definitely help that too.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we do play Indiana on Tuesday, which, as you know, Rutgers owns the state of Indiana. So hopefully we can continue with that. But it's one of those things where is this the worst? Does it get worse before it gets better? Like, I don't want to see Rutgers at 0-6, 0-7 in the Big Ten. Like, there's one thing if Rutgers goes 5-6 and 14 in Big Ten play, and they win one, they lose two, they win one, they lose two, and it's like, okay, like, we knew this year was going to be a struggle. I don't want to be in a situation where we're starting to look like Minnesota, where we're 210 in the net or 180 in the net, and it's like, every game's a 15 to 20 point blowout. I mean, obviously this is common sense. Nobody wants to see that as a Rutgers fan, but it's sad to think that that is a possibility if things don't turn around quickly. I just think if Pike, wants to salvage this season, he's got to change up the lineup. I think we both agree on who needs to come out of the lineup, and B, he needs to shorten his rotations. The 5 guys that we mentioned, they're fine to play. I'm not saying cut their playing time to 0. Wolf is okay to come in. Austin Williams is okay to come in. Gavin, obviously, if he's not starting, is okay to come in. And then after that, like, I don't want to see Chol. I don't want to see Oscar. I don't want to see Jermichael Davis is okay to come in. So that's 9. Like, I don't want to see anyone after Jermichael Davis. I think that Chol and Oscar end up getting processed out for 2024. So it's one of those things where if they don't play, like, you're not stunting their growth. Oscar might retire from basketball in America and go play in Sweden, and who knows where Chol ends up. Like, I don't know what his talent level is, but it's clearly not Big Ten level. So let those 9 guys just grind it out. And I did bring up something in one of the Discords earlier that we're about 2 games left before Jeremiah Williams' half-season suspension that was talked about might be up. So we might see Jeremiah Williams in 3 games, or we might not see him at all this season. I would like to at least see him, but I don't make the rules or the deem the suspensions on that. So not up to me, obviously.
Yeah, as far as I can tell, I'm not sure if we're going to see him. I don't know if it's that was the thing with Jeremiah Williams. He had not one, not two, but three things going on with him. He had the torn Achilles, which or I don't know if it was torn, but it was an Achilles injury severe enough that he missed the entire season. It seems like he's mostly okay from that. There was the two-time transfer waiver that he needed, which just doesn't exist anymore. Thank you. Whatever court did that, I guess. I don't know. It makes my head hurt at this point. I never know what to do with that. And then, like you mentioned, the suspension or punishment or whatever for gambling. So that was, I don't think we're gonna see him this year just because I think they're just gonna, in Jamaica and Jeremiah Williams' case in particular, not the whole season. They're just gonna punt to next year and see what he can contribute. But I definitely am looking forward to seeing him on the court whenever that may be, whether it's Tuesday or 2024.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be great to get him because every report has been that he's one of our better players. Now, granted, as we've seen on this team, the skill level isn't all that high, so not necessarily saying much. But if he's one of our better players, that we could definitely use him, and it wouldn't hurt. But you know, time will tell. I will say, we had a career day today though for Mawat Mag, 24-10. I never thought Mawat Mag is a guy who could score 24 points in a game, whether he was a freshman or a fifth year senior. Obviously, he's a fourth year senior. I'm just saying, like, I never saw that coming. I thought he was a guy that, if everything went well and Rutgers was winning and he was doing everything he does, he would get 17, 18, 19, maybe. I never thought 24 was in his bag. I mean, there was I think a 5 minute stretch of game time where he scored like 18 of those 24 points. So it's good to see that. He clearly looks like he's back fully from his injury. But it's just about everyone else stepping up. And I thought after we beat Seton Hall, this team would take off. I thought they beat LIU and Stonehill easily, and they struggled with those two games. And I said early on in the season, losing to Princeton's was one thing. It's fine. And Princeton ends up being good, but we needed to beat these sisters of the poor schools. Fairleigh Dickinson, Stonehill, LIU, Boston, Bryant. We needed to beat them by 30 plus to be a good team. You can't beat every one of these teams except for I think it was BU was 12-point game with 10 minutes left, and then they go on an 18-6 spurt and they win by 25. That's bad. That's Mike Rice level Rutgers, where we'd play St. Bonaventure before St. Bonaventure was anything good, and we would beat them at the buzzer or something, or we play Hartford and we beat them by 7. No, you got to blow out these low major teams and blow them out convincingly. And when we struggle with Bryant and we struggle with LIU, we're gonna get ran out the gym most times than not by Big Ten teams. And as we've seen, lost by 18 to Illinois, lost by 9, but it was really a 15-point game all day. And then we were down 17.5 to Ohio State. So we've said it 5 times already. Something's got to change, and something's got to change faster. This is going to be a really bad season.
Yeah, and I guess we'll see. We'll see if anything does change. The next game up we could talk about is Indiana. Like you said, Rutgers owns the state of Indiana, Indiana University in particular. So, but Indiana is not looking too great so far this season either. It really does seem like the bottom, not the middle of the Big Ten has really fallen off in the past few years, and that's why the Big Ten's not going to get as many teams in as they usually do into the tournament. Indiana is one of those teams. This team cannot shoot the basketball, and I think this is a winnable game for Rutgers, and it's turning into, I guess, to steal a phrase from the Are You Screw podcast, a must can't lose game at home. You're already reeling. You kind of have to take one of these rivalry quote unquote games. I mean, am I off base here at all?
No, I mean I agree with you. If you want if you don't want to be the 14th ranked team in the Big Ten this year, you got to win this game. Khalil, I don't know how to pronounce it. Khalil Ware is going to be a problem. He's, played on. I know in the beginning of the season he was playing unbelievable. I don't know if he's still been playing great, but he's going to be a problem. Malik Renew transformed his body as a freshman to now he's averaging 15, 16 a game. I didn't think anything of him when he was a freshman, even though I know he was either a high 4-star or barely a 5-star recruit. I don't remember what his recruiting ranking was, but he's taken that sophomore leap that a lot of guys do. And, I don't know if Xavier Johnson, is he back yet?
I think I know he's been questionable for a long time now. I'm not
Yeah,
sure if he's fully back yet, but I mean, if he is, that's just another guy that can get under Rutgers' skin.
yeah, he's always a pest. And then you already know. I don't even need to tell you. I think you already know what's going to happen on Tuesday. Who's going to torch us?
It's gonna be of course it's gonna be Trey Galloway. Trey Galloway's
No,
still
it's
there,
not going to be
right?
Trey. Well, I call Trey Galloway Troy Bolton, but it's not going to be Trey Galloway. It's going to be Mackenzie Mbako. He's gonna have a career day being in Jersey. He's gonna have 20 fans up in the corner of 302 or whatever. I don't know what section, all the way in the corner, 316 maybe. He's just gonna go off. I'm just telling you right now, Mackenzie Mbako coming back to Jersey, gonna have like 18-8, and catapult himself into like back into the NBA draft conversation. But yeah, it's a game you have to win. You got to beat Indiana when they're struggling. You got to beat the Minnesotas, and Michigan this year looks terrible. Like you got to beat in Maryland. Like if you could beat those teams, that gets you to 4 or 5 wins, and then you pick off a Michigan State or Ohio. I don't think we play Ohio State again, do we?
As far as I don't think so, but I could be wrong. I haven't checked the schedule in a little
Well, you
bit.
pick off like a Northwestern who seems good this year. Maybe you beat I don't want to say Purdue because I think Purdue would run us out the building, but you get what I'm saying. You pick up a few, beat a Penn State or beat a I'm like blanking out on Big Ten teams right now, Wisconsin or something, right? And then you get the 7 wins, and then all right, it's a respectable year. We weren't expecting to make the tournament, but we won 7 or 8 Big Ten games. But if you can't beat Indiana at home, it's just going to be a disaster of a season.
Yeah, definitely. And I just checked. Xavier Johnson returned a couple days ago against Nebraska. He only played 14 minutes. He missed about a month or so with a foot injury. So it seems like I don't know if he'll be fully 100% when they come to New Jersey on Tuesday, but at the very least, it seems like he'll be playing. And yeah, I think Ibako's, of course, just because that's a Rutgers thing to happen. He'll be set for a pretty good game. It just feels like things are kind of clunky. Like things just don't work. Not in the same Rutgers sense as there's like pieces that don't fit together, but it just feels like there's pieces that can work together. They're just not working right, in my opinion, with Indiana. And granted, I haven't watched enough Indiana to fully make that call, but it just feels like things aren't really working out right now for them. And I guess Indiana's probably feeling the same desperation right now, where it's, they feel good, or they're feeling the opposite good. They got ran out of the building by Nebraska on their home floor. Things are starting to teeter in the direction of if they catch a couple losses here, their season might be over, especially for an Indiana program that can be described in a word as impatient. So this is kind of a desperation game for both teams. I think Rutgers really needs to win that game, especially at home against a team that you've beaten no matter what for the past like 4 years or so. So yeah, that's definitely going to be a game that they have to win. I'm interested to see how Rutgers can get into Indiana's depth because it doesn't seem like there's a lot of it. But if they can get into it, and granted, their own depth isn't great, but I'm interested to see how the benches play against each other.
Yeah. And I just looked when you were talking. I mean, Indiana does have like 5 or 6 guys that average like over 7, 8 points a game, and then it drops off. But if you look in, the bottom of their roster, you got a guy like Gabe Cups, who I believe that's the guy that had the shooting competition with LeBron James in an AAU game. And he's averaging 3 points a game, but he's a kid who can shoot, and Pike doesn't like to guard shooters, so watch him hit 3 threes. It's going to be like if we lose that game, it's going to be one of those games where some guy that doesn't normally step up steps up, or Malik Renew goes all 27 points. That's just how Rutgers has been losing every game this year. Is people that step up that shouldn't be stepping up, or people go off. Um, even the Mississippi State game, we had a chance. I thought we really played well in the first half and had a chance to steal that game. And then in the blink of an eye, it was a 14-point game. And it was all because we couldn't stop their center, who, yeah, he's a big guy and a pretty good player, clearly, but he hadn't done much in his career. Like, I think he transferred in from like UAB or something and was averaging like 8 points a game. Like, he wasn't like this prolific guy, and plays, he plays against Cliff and looks like Akeem Olajuwon. So, uh, it's been a rough season. So I'm just hoping things pick up, but not hopeful right now.
Yeah, and It's yeah, let's coming up, it's going to be a tough stretch of games. I mean, Indiana's up next at home. That's never going to be easy. And then after that, I mean, looking at the schedule, after Indiana, you go to the Breslin Center where I don't think Rutgers has ever won there. Then you host Nebraska, who looks better. Then you travel all the way back to Champaign to face Illinois. Granted, with probably without Terrence Shannon, but that's still a really good team. They took Purdue to the brink. A couple, I think that was, yeah, that was last night. And then speaking of Purdue, they host they're off for a week in between Illinois and hosting Purdue, and then they close out January by hosting Penn State. So the schedule doesn't get any easier. And if you look at some of the trends of past Rutgers teams over the past couple of years, they always play well in the beginning of January and then kind of have a drop off in the middle of the end of the month. And then February is when they miraculously pick it up again. And that's where they cement their tournament status, or I guess not this year, but still. It seems like they always start to play their best once the calendar turns to February, sans a big injury. And then the middle of January is kind of where that kind of drop off comes. So I'm interested to see if we see that or maybe even some kind of reversal because they do play a lot of good teams down the stretch in the month of January.
Yeah, maybe we have like an a complete 360 from last year, or 180, whatever the term would be. No, not 360, a 180. Where we struggle in the beginning of Big Ten play, and we're 1-4 or 2-6, and all of a sudden we win 7 out of 8. I mean, that's optimistic, as optimistic as I can be, but that would be great because then you play well going into March, and then anything could happen. But it's gonna take a lot. Somebody's got to step up, and I think the lineup combinations have to be better. I think Pike, Knight, Thompson, Smoke, they all got to grind the film and find a lineup combination that works. Whether it's focus, and I think they got to focus on one thing. They either got to focus on an ultra defensive lineup, an ultra rebounding lineup, an ultra shooting lineup, like something to hold their hat on. I think I just don't. I don't know what the true answer is right now, because it's like whack-a-mole. Oh, we'll solve the rebounding issue, and then we won't be able to, you know, guard anyone or something, or we'll solve the defensive issue and then we won't be able to shoot, or we'll solve the shooting issue and then we won't play defense. Like it's going to be one of those seasons unless Michael Jordan comes through with some water from the faucet and sprays it on the Rutgers basketball team. That's about the only hope right now I got. But they need some
Yeah.
of Pike's secret stuff.
Yeah, I mean, we know he's capable of that, but I guess we'll have to see. But I guess to put it in a more optimistic light, some big players are coming in next year, and they actually got to play at Jersey Mike's Arena last week. Lathan Somerville, Ace Bailey. Unfortunately, Dylan Harper was supposed to play, but he didn't in the battle. I mean, there were some truly jaw-dropping performances, especially by Ace Bailey. I mean, just to start off with him, he is really good. He has the talk, and he backs it up with his game. I mean, I unfortunately wasn't able to watch as much of that game as I would have liked, but he really looked like the real deal. And now there's like there's legitimate talks that you could have of he should maybe be ranked over Cooper Flag in the recruiting rankings. I know it doesn't mean anything, but like that's how good Ace Bailey has looked of late.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. I know I've been a fan a little bit longer than you have, but I know you've been a fan your whole life. You ever think Rutgers would land not just one, but two one and done, like top five recruiting players in the class? Like Ace Bailey, every time I watched him when he first, like before he committed, I had no idea who he was. Like he visited one day with Jamal. I remember he walked right past me. I looked up at this kid and I'm like, who the hell is this guy? And then, of course I figured out who it was. Saw it was Ace Bailey. I'm like, this guy's never going to Rutgers. Commits 3 hours later. But like, did you ever think you'd have a kid like this come to Rutgers? I mean, he literally looks like a skinny Paul George. It's like a mix of Kevin Durant and Paul George. And like you go, oh no, like you can't compare him to those guys. No, he looks like he can be the number one, number two pick in the draft. Step into the NBA and maybe not year one, but by year 2 or 3, average 22 to 25 points a game. Like he's unbelievable. I don't think there's a weakness. I mean, maybe playmaking, but he plays at a public high school in Georgia. Like, if he doesn't have gaudy assist numbers, is that because he's not a good passer or because he's passing to kids at a public school? Like, if you put him on Montverde, would he have 37, 12, and 5 or 37, 8, and 8? Like, So I don't. There's no weakness there. And then of course Dylan Harper. I mean, it's kind of funny. I remember when it was Ron's senior night, and I was talking to the usher by me. I'm his brother was there, and his brother was like a freshman in high school at the time. I'm like, yeah, his brother's supposed to be pretty good. Like, I think he's supposed to be better than Ron, but he was like the 48th ranked recruit. So okay, like we should have a good chance to land the 48th ranked recruit, like being a brother of a Rutgers player. And then he blew up, and now he's number two, and now he's getting like James Harden comps, which part of it's like a lazy comp, like he's a lefty, whatever. But he has that style of play. Like he can score at any time, he could pass, defend. Like, I mean, James Harden didn't play defense, but he could do everything on the basketball court you need him to do. He does lack that top end athleticism, but he makes up for it. I mean, they're the two of them being coming to Rutgers is unbelievable. But I'm also super high on Lathan Somerville. I don't know about you. Did you watch him play against college? My buddy coaches the school. I can't remember the team. It's like College Achieve or something like that from Asbury Park. Did you watch Lathan?
I only some of the highlights. I did see him, of course, break the ankles of the opposing center, which was really funny. But yeah, I'm really high on him too because he's big, but this isn't an insult at all. It's actually a compliment. He doesn't play like a big bruising center, but he has that size. But he also has the touch to play like, one of those smaller wing type guys. So I mean, I'm pretty excited about him too.
He reminds me. I've been calling him. He's like Baby Boogie. And DeMarcus Cousins is the number two recruit in the country, and arguably was on his way to a Hall of Fame career in the NBA before he tore his Achilles. But I mean, he plays very similar to a young DeMarcus Cousins. He can dribble, he can shoot. I mean, he's 6'9". Well, it's funny because you say he's 6'9", 225. Ace Bailey's 6'9", 200 pounds, but Ace Bailey is a wing guard type player, and Somerville's 6'9" and is a Big Ten, is a center power forward type player, but he's hitting like pull up fadeaway threes. Like, we've never had an offensive big man like this. I know a lot of people like to say like he reminds everyone of Travion Williams. I see that. I mean, this is a guy that is going to be the opposite of what Cliff is. You're going to pass him the ball in the post, he's going to make the right play, or he's going to score himself. He's not going to hold it and get double teamed and not be able to pass out. Like, he's not going to throw these hook shots that don't have any chance of going in. Like, it'll be exciting. Now he'll be a freshman next year, so he might not hit the ground running, but he's a very good at talented offensive player. So I'm excited for those three. And the other two guys, Bryce Dortch and Dylan Grant, should be solid and are a step up from what we normally recruit. So it's nice to see this 5-star or 5-headed class come in. And it looks like 2025 might be heading into a not the same direction, but close enough for Rutgers.
Yeah, it probably won't be the two of the top three players, but I mean, if you get one of Trey McKinney and Darius Acuff and another top 50 guy, Brandon Stores Jr. It's apparently, from what I've seen, it's between Rutgers and Georgia Tech. Of course, Carl Hobbs is down there still, so of course,
I'm
but
so salty that we never got Bane Dongo.
oh, he looks really good for Georgia Tech. And he would have fit really well as like the perfect like four type guy
Yep.
that can kind of do it all. Um, not that Andre Hyatt's done a bad job in his spot. I actually think he's been probably the most consistent performer on the team, but I think, just having that skill set, even just as a depth piece, would have been huge.
So Bay and Dongo today against Boston College. He did foul out. He looks like he's got that Antoine Wolfolk gene of picking up fouls. 8 of 14 from the field, 18 points, 10 rebounds, no blocks or steals. Like, I'm looking at his stat line: 18 and 10, 10 and 9, 20 and 8, 22 and 12. Like, when I saw this kid play, I was like, I think he should be ranked higher than Gavin Griffiths. And he's showing it, just not in the Rutgers jersey.
Yeah, it
And
hurts.
it
And
pains me.
oh,
He reminds me of Pascal Siakam. I mean, he might be how crazy is it? He might be a one and done. Once like
now
somebody watches Georgia Tech basketball, like nobody watches Georgia Tech basketball, so nobody knows about this kid probably. But if some scouts start tuning into the ACC, he puts up the stat line of a one and done type player. I mean, the fouls need to come down, but he's 6'9", 6'10", can block shots, can shoot, can score and rebound. I mean, Oh my God.
Yeah, that one's definitely gonna hurt as a recruiting battle that Rutgers lost. But hey, I mean things are still looking pretty good. They hosted a 2026 four-star whose last name is escaping you, Vincent. I think you actually sat next, or at least a couple rows over from him, at
I
one of the
wasn't
games.
actually in my seats for that game. But the guy who sits behind me told me it was like Vincent Akunze or something. Uh, it's like some African name. I don't know how to pronounce it. It's like Akunze or something. Hold on, I will find it real quick. I sent it over to the rivals guys. Here it is. Vincent, Vincent Osazi. I thought it was more African than it was. It wasn't actually that. Um, from Boston, Reason Prep. Don't know the who came up with that school name, but okay. Sounds like Finley Prep, like it's not a real school, but you never know. 6'8", no weight. Rivals does not know how heavy he is. Couldn't even guess at it. But he's 65 overall in the country. I know nothing about him other than that. The guy who sat behind me said things went well. They like the coaches and seemed like a good, smart kid. So hey, maybe Rutgers hits the 2026 class off with a bang. We'll see. It's a ways away though.
Yeah, I guess we'll see. Speaking of 2026, another guy that I really like, speaking of Dylan Harper, of course, too, is his teammate Kaner Asperilla. I really like him. I know he didn't show out as much in the battle as much as he did in the City of Palms, but I really like him. And I don't know if Rutgers is offered yet, but they probably should.
I think he's like a 5 star. Like I think he's like a top 20 kid. So I'm sure if Rutgers hasn't offered, they will. Unless for some reason he's like a type of kid that Pike doesn't like. But I think Pike's throwing it out the window because I remember at a court club meeting last year, Pike said, I go to the gym and I see these kids with all these entourages and the film crew, whatever, and I go if I see that, I walk out the building. Well, he didn't walk out the building for Ace Bailey, and he didn't walk out the building for Dylan Harper. And every time those guys make a layup, it gets filmed and shown on Instagram. So I think he might have adopted the 2020s of recruiting and film session or film, whatever you want to call it, highlight reels. So, hey, if that brings us in better players, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
Might bring in some headaches, but it'll bring in better players.
Yeah. And yeah, so we'll see how that works. So not only on the men's side, the women's side had some star power too. A couple of nights ago, last night actually, although it might be a couple nights ago, depending on when you're watching or listening, the one and only Caitlin Clark was in the building, and I was lucky enough to be on the radio broadcast for that game. And I don't know if you watched that game, but just the sheer environment and the presence that she brings to every game, it's just nuts to see in person.
Yeah. I saw she had a triple double. I was supposed to go to that game, didn't end up going. Um, it's just like it's unbelievable that the crowd and the amount of people that were interested, and a lot of it was driven by like young girls who are getting into basketball, or even like older girls who played basketball. Like it was so many, there were so many fans that like wanted her autograph, and it was like college age kids, little kids. Like it's crazy the amount of the reach that she has for being a college basketball player from the state of Iowa. I mean, national, you're all the way in New Jersey, 1,500 miles away, and you have Jersey Mike's Arena packed. Half of it was probably Iowa fans, from what I could tell. And it was like a celebrity walked in the building. At least I wasn't there, you were there, but that's what it felt like from like seeing the media.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It was basically like a celebrity. I mean, even after the game when she was like getting off the court, like it was just mobbed. Pretty much every exit was just mobbed by fans. There were definitely a lot of Iowa fans, but even Rutgers fans. I mean, after the game in the presser, she mentioned that, pretty much every game there's a lot of little girls that are huge fans of her coming to see her, but last night was probably just the most that she had seen at a game, and because they don't get to go to the East Coast that often, it was really cool to see. So I mean, just amazing stuff to see. And Rutgers unfortunately lost. That kind of takes like a sidestep to the sheer presence of Caitlin Clark, but yeah, she had her third triple double this season, the 14th of her career, which is just nuts. I think she's second all time in women's basketball in triple doubles. Sabrina Ionescu has the only one who has more. But yeah, great game by Caitlin Clark in Iowa. And Rutgers has unfortunately lost six straight on the women's side, so they got to figure it out too. Kayleen Smikle's been down for the last couple of games due to a medical issue. We'll see how long that takes to fix up and for her to come back. But yeah, both basketball teams unfortunately on the court. this year have not shown their best, but it'll get better in the future.
Yeah. I'm actually surprised for the Iowa women's team that they had, maybe they did. Like I said, I don't pay attention to women's basketball all that much. I'm surprised that like no, they didn't plan like some sort of like double header in like New York City or something. Like have the men play. It could. I mean, you can get a big. Iowa's got enough. They're a good enough team where let's just say they played the men play Syracuse at the Garden. Well, you don't want to play Syracuse at the Garden. Play Virginia at the Garden, right? And then the women play Notre Dame at the Garden, like some big time doubleheader, right? You would sell out Madison Square Garden for if the men's matchup is anywhere decent, and then the women's matchup has Caitlin Clark, like a Super Saturday kind of thing, like the Big Ten did. Like I'm surprised they didn't do that. You would have sold 18,000 seats, and it would have been great. But I guess maybe they did do like some neutral site game that I didn't see, but I think that would have been huge for not only Iowa and Caitlin Clark, but women's basketball in general.
Yeah. I think that would actually be pretty cool, that kind of men's and women's basketball type thing, because you're seeing it become more of an equal platform. I mean, a couple days ago they announced a new TV deal between ESPN and the NCAA for some of those sports. So yeah, I would agree. I think that would be really cool to see in the future.
Yeah. I mean, it's got to be a school or a team that like will draw. Like, you don't want to have the women, let's just say, what's a middle there? Like the Georgia Tech women's team playing some random team, and then the Georgia Tech men's team playing in New York City. Like, they're gonna get like 2,000 fans in Madison Square Garden. But if you have like the UConn do a doubleheader, or LSU do a doubleheader, or South Carolina, like a team that can draw something, you got something there. And man, maybe I should go into the basketball game promoting business. And I'll talk to Richard Kent about that.
Oh, great idea. Always talk to Richard Ken about everything. Great idea.
I saw
But
him walk past me at the rack one of the first games of the season. It was him. It was Chris Carlin. I think it was Sean Tucker, and it was somebody else. It was like a power meeting, and it was happening like 3 feet in front of me. It was
wow.
I think it was my greatest moment as a Rutgers fan.
Yeah, those are three pretty high up Rutgers people. But yeah, I mean, like I said, things will get better for both sides, especially on the recruiting end. Um, Today the Scarlet Knights got a huge commitment from a 2024 five-star Kiyomi McMiller from Life Center Academy in Burlington, originally from Silver Springs, Maryland. I mean, I watched some of her highlights, especially since Rutgers has been in on her for a while. She has some of the best handles out of high schoolers, especially in the women's game that I've seen. Um, Koku's Washington slowly building a pretty stacked guard room, so I'm really excited to see what that looks like next year. I already have Zakara Perkins signed on, ready to go. And I don't think they're done yet. Michaela Blakes is another five-star from Rutgers Prep, also in New Jersey. Rutgers
Right
is in
down the
her top
road.
seven. Exactly, right down the road. Rutgers is in her top seven. Antonia Bates played there as well, so there's just another connection. So we haven't really seen anything about when she'll commit, but Rutgers could be in on that one as well. The recruiting is looking pretty good on both sides. So definitely a lot of excitement for the future.
The NIL money is coming together for 2024. That's all I could say.
Definitely.
I do
Um,
wonder, at least on the men's side. Like, granted, I think we both agree we're never going to see this type of class ever again in our life. Like, we're never going to see two top three recruits. We might see a 5-star every couple of years or something. Like we got Gavin, who's almost a 5-star. We got Ace now and Dylan. Like we might see a 5-star more frequently than we will. We're never seeing this. But I'm curious, is with Rutgers and NIL, like, was this a 1-year thing where I know Pike's not supposed to use NIL and whatever, but we all know the truth. Like he goes, every coach goes to their donors or whatever. Um, was this one of those things where like, hey, get me $1 million and I can get us these two kids, or is it like there's money there for Rutgers to get kids when they need them? Like, or like, are we going to bring in a 5-star every year or every 2 years, or is this the peak and then we're going to go back to recruiting in the 200s? Like, I'm very curious. I have no, knowledge about the inner workings of NIL at Rutgers, but I would hope there's some money available and funds available and opportunities available, whatever the correct word the NCAA wants me to use, um, for Rutgers to consistently land. Even if we just landed a top 100 kid every year, or top 75 kid every year, that would be a huge upgrade to the program than getting these kids who were ranked 250 and we're hoping that they pan out.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see where that goes as well. I do think it's not just a 1-year thing, but I also don't think there's going to be I don't know the exact amount, but I would say probably like a couple million for the recruiting class. But either way, I think the momentum will keep up in the future. So, um, yeah, I guess I guess we'll see. But anything else that you want to touch on before we wrap it up here?
No, I think we pretty much hit everything.
All right. Well, yeah, I guess we'll check back after whether it's after the Indiana game or a different game. We'll see. But this has been another episode of the Pikes Place podcast. Be sure to follow us and follow on all podcasting platforms and social media, and also follow Big Banter Sports, of course. But again, this has been another episode of the Pikes Place podcast. Thank you for watching and listening, and we'll see you next time.